people there.
Are we good to go?
We are good to go. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, welcome everybody to the Monday, November 18th, 2024 regular Langley City Council meeting. We're just admitting some folks in right now. But before we get started, we should always acknowledge the land. So we are on the unceded and traditional territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, Mathaqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. Is there any amendments? So seeing none, would anybody like to move the November 18th, 2024 agenda? Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Albrecht. So any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. Councillor White, do you also agree? Councillor White, are you there? Did we lose Councillor White? Let's see. Let's send him a note. I'm assuming he's okay with the agenda.
I am fine with the agenda.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad we can hear that. So we're going to move on to the consent agenda. We have that in front of us. Is there anybody that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? So seeing none, would anybody like to move it? So moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by Councillor James. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. I know we have a lot of folks in the room today, so before we continue further, if you're not up, I'll just ask that you stay off camera, just so we don't get confused on who's speaking right now. So that would be great. So we'll do that. And then also for those folks that are joining, just a reminder to stay on mute until it is your section as well. So thank you again. So with that, we are on to the council member reports. So just noting that our next regular meeting is December 2nd and then followed by December 9th. So we're on to item 5B, which is council advisory body updates. Is there any member of council that has something they would like to share for a meeting in which we don't receive minutes for, but which they attended? So I'm not seeing anything from anybody. Nope. Okay. So then we'll move on to the next section, which is bylaws. So that's 6A. We do have bylaw 3296, zoning bylaw amendment 212. So I think this time I'll check with Ms. Kenny. Has our statutory requirements been met for this?
Yes, Mayor Pahal.
Thank you. So at this time, then I'll ask our Director of Development Services, Mr. Johansson, to provide a brief overview.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the audience. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the subject properties are zoned RS1 and designated low-rise residential in the OCP, or Official Community Plan. And this land use allows multifamily apartments up to 6 stories. The proposal involves a 6-story building consisting of 80 units. It includes 3-bedroom units and incorporates a landscape buffer and setback between the proposed site and the adjacent townhouses to the east. The application has been reviewed by the advisory design panel, and the applicant's responses are included in the attached memo. The applicant is also here tonight to present their rezoning proposal prior to consideration of first and second reading. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I would invite the applicants to provide a brief presentation to council.
Hi, good evening. I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our site located at 53rd Avenue. To the west, we have elementary school. To the south, we have a park. This is 53rd Avenue. This is 52nd. The parking entry from the cul-de-sac. We have 2 lobbies, one from 53rd Avenue, one from 52nd Avenue. This is parking level 2, P2. It's mainly the parking plus residential storage and bike lockers. This is P1, L1, which is shared as parking and residential units. This is the north vestibule, which is the main north lobby, which is the main entrance from 53rd Avenue. From the cul-de-sac, we enter to the parking, this ramp to the P2 level, and then this is for the P1 level. We have 16 visitor stall, garbage room, and the south lobby. On level 2, we have indoor amenity, exercise, lounge, and outdoor amenity. This is level 3 to 5, typical floor. This is only the north portion of the building, which is 6-story. The rest will be 5-story. This is rendering from 53rd Avenue. This is the main lobby. This is from 52nd Avenue, from the cul-de-sac. This is the parking ramp to the left here. And this is the outdoor amenity. This is a better view for the outdoor amenity over the parking slab or floor. This is to P2, this is to P1. This is another general view or rendering. I'll quickly run a fly through. This is from 53rd Avenue.
Are you running that right now? If you are, we can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it?
No, I just see thank you.
1 second, let me, sorry, apologize. Can you see now the
Yes.
rendering?
Yes,
Okay.
we can. Thank you.
Can you see the video?
Yes.
Perfect. This is from 53rd Avenue. This is the main lobby. 53rd on the right. This is the 6-story on the right, the 5-story on the left. This is the cul-de-sac from 52nd Avenue, and we have another residential lobby. This is the parking ramp going down. This is the outdoor amenity over the parking. This is to P1 entry. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. At this time, I'll open it up to council for questions. So I'm not seeing any questions from council.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead, Councillor White. You're breaking up.
sorry, Mayor Hall, I'm just having an issue. I'm gonna. Can you hear me okay?
Continue talking.
Hello?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to, I have a question. Thank you. I guess my questions are, I find that the parcels that are involved in this application, from my perspective, better suited for the purpose and intent of what we've seen come forward through and which
Maybe you want to stop your video, Councillor White. We can't hear you.
for the appropriate densification of single family dwelling. Oh, can you hear me now?
I probably just want to
Hello?
go off. Yeah, keep on going.
I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, I was saying, with the introduction of Bill 44, it specifically provides for the appropriate kind of densification of single family dwellings, and I know that this is zoned up to 6 stories. I think my question and my conflict with this particular proposal is that it enters into a cul-de-sac, and for me that creates some scenarios that I just have questions about regarding traffic and the overall fit within an apartment that's 6 stories high that kind of straddles properties that are involved in a cul-de-sac. So I appreciate the fact that we need densification. But for me, this really kind of seems a little inappropriate for the design from my perspective. I think there's a series of townhomes that run along, I think 201A, and it's multi-unit housing, townhouses, and so, for me, that's something that I think is kind of more appropriate coming into a cul-de-sac. I think I mentioned the concerns about traffic coming into that cul-de-sac area with an 80 unit apartment building. That's a substantial increase in traffic, I think, coming into a kind of a closed area that I think may potentially cause some other issues. And I'm not sure if a traffic study report has been made on that, but there's a few kind of issues there that I would have concerns about. I'm just wondering if Mr. Johansson might be able to speak to that somewhat as well. Thank you.
So I think maybe we can, if it talks about traffic studies perhaps, and then also sort of apartments and cul-de-sacs and the mix of uses. I don't want to speak out of line, but I know Bryden Crescent and 199A Street in my neighborhood come to mind. But we'll let staff address that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, to Councillor White. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, so the area south of 53 is actually is part of the Nickel River District Neighborhood Plan process. Well, it was intended for a mix of apartments and townhomes, with the townhomes fronting onto the floodplain. And as the area builds out, including this area and then the block to the east, which is another long cul-de-sac, is that that cul-de-sac would actually be opened up to 201A and possibly with additional lanes and streets to create a more distributed traffic pattern. The cul-de-sac in this case is pretty short compared to other scenarios, so we're relatively comfortable with the unit count and the scale of development in this area, and based on what we're seeing in other parts of the city where we've had denser multifamily development off of cul-de-sacs and no discernible impacts there. That all being said, there is definitely going to be a traffic study and the recommendations of that implemented as this project gets developed. And city engineer, Mr. Pollock, going to have some comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to Councillor White. Just building on Mr. Johansson's comments. Certainly, the applicant has we've reviewed the terms of reference for the TIA, the traffic impact assessment. That is currently being worked on, we understand, and we would very much want to have the opportunity to review that before commenting too much. We'd like to see what the applicant is able to bring forth, but that I understand that process is underway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pollock and Mr. Johansson.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor White, for now?
Yeah, for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Albrecht.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal, and I just, excuse me, as chair of the advisory design panel, I just wanted to relay the message that the design panel reviewed it. I want to thank the developer for addressing. I think there was about 13 items, and I think they addressed each and every one of them. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And the committee was actually looking forward to seeing this project go forward, and we're in full favor of this proceeding. So I just wanted to give that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Albrecht. Any further questions? So I am not seeing any. So we have recommended motion here that the bylaw cited as zoning bylaw 1996, number 2100, amendment number 212-2024, number 3293 be read a first and second time. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Solium. Is there further discussion? So I'm seeing none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? So it's opposed by Councillor White, so it is carried. So that brings us on to item 6B. That is bylaw amendment, or it's a bylaw 3294, zoning bylaw amendment 213. So at this time, I will again ask the corporate officer if all the statutory requirements have been met.
Yes, they have, Mayor Pahal.
Thank you so much. I'll ask Mr. Johansson if you can provide a brief context on this one.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening once again. The subject properties are zoned RM2 and designated mid-rise residential in the OCP, which allows multifamily development between 6 and 12 stories with a maximum density of 3.5 floor area ratio or FAR. This rezoning and DP application was submitted in June 2024 as a design change to the original application, which was a 12-story application that Council gave third reading to in July of 2023. The design change brings the building down to 6 stories and about 2.6 FAR from the previous 12 stories and 3.5 FAR. This design change application was made while the land use contract discharge application was still active. So the original application had 3 applications, one of which was to discharge a land use contract on the property, which at the time enabled only a 3-story building, basically what's on the site now to be developed. So that's the rezoning before council. Tonight is considered a continuation and design change of the original application package that was made back in 2022. The new design includes 283 units, down from the previous 370 units, but it still includes the same amount of secured rental units, 53 that are secured by housing agreement for the life of the building. The OCP requires one-to-one replacement for purpose-built rental buildings. So in this case, a minimum of 44 replacement rental units are required. In this case, the applicant is providing 53. The site plan for the building is similar to the previous building in terms of layout and center courtyard space, and reflects the OCP development permit guidelines and best practices setbacks of 6 meters from adjacent lot lines. So the tenant relocation plan that was brought forward with the original application is in progress, and there are now 12 remaining tenants, whereas there were 28 remaining tenants in July of 2023. The application has been reviewed by the advisory design panel, and the applicant's responses are included in the attached memo to this package. And the applicant is also here to present their rezoning proposal to council prior to consideration of first and second reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johansson. So with that overview, we will introduce the applicant for their presentation. So we have folks from Keystone, I believe.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Noel, and this is my associate, Eric, the architect on the project. Let's just share the screen and get started. I will flip to, just apologies for a second. There we go. Oh, we're on the end of the, sorry, 1 second. So this is the Project Pyramid Apartments done by Keystone in association with Whitetail Homes, the developer. We're located at 204th between 53 and 54th Avenue. At the, as noted earlier, existing site of Pyramid Apartments, a 3-story apartment building. Some of the site context and analysis. It's a reasonably flat site. We are in a floodplain area, which we will go into further later in the presentation. We also have adjacency just to one street, and there are some existing trees on the site, some of which we did an arborist report and will be retaining. And we have a surrounding context of 3-story apartments. So we have a total of 283 units, as mentioned, 202 of which are adaptable, or sorry, 202 which are 1-bed, and 6 3-bed, with the rest in between at 1 and den and 2-bed. Eric, if you want to just speak quickly to the architecture and kind of the transition between our old scheme and our new scheme.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. The original scheme still was based on a concept that was scaled, a human scale development with replicating the sort of essence of a tree trunk at the ground plane level, 2 stories of sort of organic, sort of landscaped areas, brick podium that brings a sort of a human scale streetscape at ground plane. And then instead of the 12-story development, the upper stories are a massing that's broken down into various components that give, again, a sense of lower scale in the neighborhood and a livable sort of welcoming area. And so the masonry is along the ground plane, and it moves more toward more other types of materials like hardy and metal panel, and then some elements of wood to bring warmth at the 2 entries.
Yeah, one other factor that was brought up at ADP, and we've taken special care, is putting the residential market entry as well as the rental entry on similar scales, as well as prominence along the street, which we did struggle with at first, but have managed to, as you can see in this rendering, demonstrate very similar vernacular in terms of architecturality, color, and visibility. We've also created a dedicated pathway for pedestrians to access the rental building as well. Just showing again the secondary path off of the main street towards the main entry of the residential visitor building. Just showing the site plan coming off of 204th. You have access directly to the indoor courtyard, which is meant for loading as well as drop off, and in case of emergency also provides fire truck access. The building is split into 3 by 2 firewalls, with the secondary firewall here splitting the rental and market buildings completely. Just demonstrating the ground floor amenity space connecting to both the rental and the market buildings from interior to exterior, which this being a shared outdoor amenity space. And just again showing the design of that space being very green and colorful, providing space for play as well as seating and for eating as well on the other side, which you'll see shortly. The parkade below ground, there are 2 levels, P1 being partial visitor as well as tenant parking. One of the items that we addressed in ADP as well was sharing the rental and market visitor parking area as well as the tenant parking area, so they aren't separated from each other, so not creating any divide between the 2 uses, but then allowing security for visitor and resident, as well as just general security and septet for the building. Again, just showing the courtyard area and the dedicated exit path around the outside of the building. The residential units on each floor. The inside corners, being somewhat undesirable, have been used for resident storage. So there's storage on each level for the residents. They don't have to go down to the parkade or down to the ground level. And because we are in a floodplain, all of those residential storage units have also been raised to above the parkade, and only bike storage would be located in the parkade below grade. Our roof plan just showing mechanical units, elevator overruns, and the build-ups where we have architectural features in the corners. And again, the section showing for SEPTEP purposes why we raised the podium, as well as for flood conditions and sensitivity to the environment. We've pulled back from a couple of the side setbacks to allow easier excavation, less disturbance to the neighboring properties, as well as allowing for shoring to be done completely on our site. And we also raised the podium for SEPTEP purposes, visibility and sight lines, clear sight lines, and privacy for those ground floor units. The section showing again that pedestrian pathway with some greenery, as well as a protective brick boundary wall between the vehicles and the pedestrians, and the ground level access or flat access to the rental building. And this section showing the relationship between interior and exterior amenity areas. And just some zoomed in sections, again, showing the rental building, residential access, as well as the market building, street front access. We're showing stairs here, but also a ramp for accessibility. Oops, apologies. Some pedestrian path, again, just showing privacy to the units as well as to the neighbors, providing some screening, but greenery screening, so it's not a hard split between buildings. And again, showing that pedestrian access for the rental building and the security of the solid wall between vehicle and pedestrian, and a softer kind of landscaping element between the building and pedestrians. Another item that came up at ADP was the screening for headlights. So we have created a screening element that's 4 to 5 feet high to prevent even raised vehicles from having glaring headlights into the neighboring properties. And again, showing our street front ramp access, stair access, as well as walk-up unit access along the street. And further to Eric's design, just showing the design elements of the undulating banding, as well as the varying brick in the height of the building. Some of the material board here, just again showing those same cementitious panel materials, brick, and some wood elements or wood toned elements. And then streetscape showing the context between our building and the adjacent neighbors. Some standard shadow studies. And another just image of the barbecue trellis area, as well as some seating and the children's play area in the amenity courtyard. And thank you.
Thank you. So is that the conclusion of your complete presentation?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So before we get to council questions, just because I know there may be members of the general public here. So two things. One, provincial law prevents us from hearing from members of the public. So public hearings are illegal in BC for things that are consistent with the OCP. If you were hoping for an opportunity to talk, unfortunately, we cannot provide that because that is illegal in British Columbia. Also, council cannot deny an application based on its density because this is in a transit-oriented area. So council doesn't have the authority to vote down a project based on its density due to provincial legislation. So I just wanted to cover that for folks who might be here and have questions about that. So with that, I'll just open it up to council if they have any questions for the applicant or for staff. So we'll start with Councillor Mack.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pahal. Through the mayor, I think I just want to share my thoughts on this application. I don't have any questions. We originally reviewed an application on this site for a 12-story building. That application has since been withdrawn and this new 6-story building taking its place. Rationale to explain why this building ought not be considered new and therefore not beholden to our updated CO 84 new tenant relocation policy was provided in the staff report. Specifically, a land use contract discharge application applied concurrently with the previous 12-story building, is being referenced as the anchor to date this new and redesigned 6-story building. Overall, I view the land use contract discharge application and the 12-story development application as existing concurrently, however, being distinct from one another. I do not accept the rationale that provided that this building shouldn't be considered as a new application. My understanding is that we were not to accept any new redevelopment applications until our updated tenant relocation policy CO 84 had been adopted. Overall, I find it quite challenging that we are being asked to consider a redevelopment application involving vulnerable tenants where the compensation outlined in policy CO 84 isn't applied.
Is that it, Councillor? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor White, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Yes, I did. My concerns are along the line of Councillor Max. My question was just regarding that exactly, the tenant relocation policy. Reading through the documentation, I can see that there was it's being presented to consider it under the old tenant relocation policy. But like Councillor Mack, I see this as a completely new application. I read through the documentation, and even in the letter that was sent to the tenants, they clearly state that Whitetail has recently decided to withdraw the application, and a new development application will be submitted in June. And it goes further on to say in the letter that for clarity, no notice to end tenancy is anticipated until 2025. So it seems clear that people are being asked to wait for further development, but no tenancy, no notice to end tenancy has been reissued with the intent that one would be reissued. So to me, that generally points to the fact that CO 84 should be applying in this particular development application. So those would be my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. And just because this is quite a unique project, I think, because it's been through a couple different iterations of tenant relocation policy. There was the original one, then there was a council sort of additional one that was put forward, which increased the tenancy protection and also reduced it to from 10% to 20% below market for the right to return. And obviously now we have CO 84. So it's, this has been through many iterations. So I guess maybe it would be useful to understand how many people were originally in that building and who was subject to what policy. And then would we retroactively pay out people that were under the old policy? Or is it only for the existing 12 people? So I'll let Mr. Johansson answer that. I know it's quite a journey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the comments. I think I can provide a little bit of going back in the process to earlier this year. I think the valid questions for sure, concerns, and it's something that staff we approached very, very carefully and charted out some pathways for the developer to consider. So as council knows, that third reading was given to the 12-story application last year in July. At the time of the application, there was 39 tenants in the building. When third reading or public hearing and third reading was given last year, there was 28, and there's 12 now. So relocation has been occurring over that time. So the developer indicated to us earlier this year that they wanted to change the design of the building and the density because of economic considerations. And so that would involve changing the rezoning and the development permit applications. But there was 3 applications that were brought forward and were considered by council at the last public hearing and given 3rd reading last year. One of which is that land use contract discharge bylaw that needs to be taken off the property in order for any kind of change of use to happen. So knowing that at some point that LUC would disappear on June 30th or July 1st, we said to the applicant, well, you can reapply for the rezoning and the DP before that, and it would be considered a continuation of the application. That's something that we do with other applications. If there's a change, for example, with a DP and a rezoning, we do that because when the application is made and just a general application, there's a series of considerations that the developer makes based on the policy of the time, their pro forma at the time, all those considerations, the finances of their project that are sort of locked in when they make that application. So we also said if you apply after the expiration of the land use contract, then it's a new application, and it's possible that you would be required to have an increased compensation. We have to remember also that the new council, the updated tenant relocation policy CO84, was not approved by council until July 22nd of 2024. So there was no new policy in place when the application was made by the applicant to change the rezoning and the DP for this. So we considered that as well. If we were to apply something, it would have to be negotiated based on something that council hadn't seen or negotiated yet. And one of the issues would have been if there was increased compensation to be asked, then it would need to be applied to the tenants that had already been relocated. And there's potentially some difficulty in the logistics of that, trying to track people down and paying them out. So you can see that there's a little bit of history behind this and the rationale and the pathways that were set out for the developer, and they chose to make their application before the entire application expired. And I also note again that the new tenant relocation policy was not in effect until July 22nd of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have some more comments from council. So we'll start with Councillor Solium.
Great. Mr. Johansson, just want to get clarification. What was the time frame that they applied, and then our CO84 went into effect, just to get the dates lined up? And then is there anything from the original application that is still in play right now, or was it essentially revoked entirely? Like, is it? I just want to get a little bit of clarification there.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good questions. Through the mayor to Councillor Solium. So the application for the rezoning and DP was June 27th, 2024, and the new tenant relocation policy came into effect on July 22nd of 2024. And the item that's been carried over from the last application to this one is the 53 secured rental units that'll be secured by housing agreement for the life of the building. So that's being brought forward. And also the offer for early relocation of 8 months compensation and 20% below market for first right of refusal.
Okay, anything else, Councillor Solium? Councillor White, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. To Mr. Johansson, thank you very much for answering the questions. I totally appreciate the sensitivity around all of these different scenarios to address things from my perspective. And I don't know what is, qualified as legal or not, but from my perspective, I don't think that we would necessarily have to go back to those individuals and satisfy them under a new contract when they've fully removed themselves from the the tenancy of the building. I do question just regarding the DCCs and the community amenity contributions, those for this particular project, were they charged and calculated on the old DCCs, or are they calculated and charged on the new DCC and CAC rate? Just a question there. Thank you.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor White. Yeah, so given that the original LUC application was still in effect, it would be the original CACs. And in terms of the DCCs, I'll have to look into that in terms of what would actually be payable for this iteration of the application. I'll see if I can dig that up. If not, we'll bring that back for third reading.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor?
Thank you very much, Mayor and Mr. Johansson. Appreciate that.
Perfect. Councillor Mack, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. I just wanted to follow up. My understanding and not my understanding, we had certain applications that were in stream that involved vulnerable tenants. I, as a member of council, adhered to our policies that were in place because I believe that's a part of good governance. We've told people they can do something, therefore it's in bad form to then change that decision midstream. This, however, from my perspective, is a new application wholly. As mentioned by Councillor White, April 29th, 2024 was the piece of correspondence where Whitetail themselves say they withdraw the application. The explanatory memo for bylaw 3283, which is the land use contract discharge application, specifically says the owner has applied to the land use contract number 2576 discharge from the title of the property to facilitate the development of a 12-story, 370-unit apartment building. I think that the tenants of the original application of the land use contract discharge application have changed, therefore they're not valid.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Councillor Albrecht.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. And again, as chair of the advisory design panel, I just want to express my gratitude to the development team for addressing all 20 concerns raised by the panel. Well done. They like the building. They're looking forward to it. In fact, the footprint of the building is identical to the initial application. Essentially, all they're doing is removing the top 6 floors, and they're even maintaining the same number of rental units and working forward with the tenant relocation package as agreed to in the timelines as noted by Mr. Johansson. So I'll be in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor James.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having heard everyone's concerns and opinions, I do not see this as a new application, given the timelines that were provided to us by staff. One of the last messages that I want to send to the development industry is that you can get the brakes pumped on you midstream. I just don't think it sends a good message, and it's clear to me that the proponent has been working extremely hard with the relocation strategy and doing a very good job listening to everything that ADP had to say as well. So I think they should be continued to proceed as they have been. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I guess a question that I have on this is maybe for staff. Would we find ourselves in any other situations where we have this overlapping policy, or is this sort of a one-off case? So do we have anything under the old policies that have yet to receive final reading, I guess?
Yes, through to the mayor. I believe there's one application that's outstanding, that's been through council as a tenant relocation plan on it. So that's something that we believe they're going to follow through on that. We're just waiting for that to come through.
Okay, and that's under the old policy or the new policy? Oh, under the old policy. Okay. And so that one Okay, so there's really this one and one more that's sort of in this
Yeah.
weird nebulous state.
Yes, actually, just stand corrected. There's one on the Michaud Crescent, which would need to come back for adoption. Just received third reading earlier this year. And also one on Eastleigh Crescent that also has that third reading and just waiting for their servicing agreement.
Okay, so there's two outstanding
Well,
with
including this one, there'd be three. Yeah.
3 outstanding with CO 81. Okay, I understand that. Yeah, this one is such a tricky one for me, because we've relocated 2/3 of the people with the existing policies, and it would be challenging, I think, for me to say, okay, well, 2/3 of the people have one policy, and then the additional 1/3 of the people have a different policy, and that's an equity problem for me. So I think, it's the same situation I think we ran into with the building that was under construction on 208 and Fraser Highway, because that was under an even older policy that went forward. So I would likely be in favor of this, even though I understand the point of wanting to adopt the new policy, but I just would find it really difficult to go back and retroactively pay folks that were relocated. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Councillor White, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Just 2 final comments. Actually, one is a question, just for clarity's sake, the 53 units that are designated as rentals, those are in perpetuity, and also are they all market rental units? So that would be my first question. And then my second thought is just reiterating some of my questions around the DCCs. And for me, I would want to reserve endorsement. I support this proposal in a lot of ways. This is just one aspect that is of particular concern because of the status of, the vulnerable tenants that we have located within this facility. And I do want to ensure that as much as possible, we're doing right by them. So just a question about the market rental of those units and whether or not those were in perpetuity. Thank you.
So I think Mr. Johansson can answer that question.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor White. Yes, the 53 units are market rental, but they're secured as market rental through a housing agreement for the life of the building, and that housing agreement would come forward to council for readings and adoption prior to adoption of the rezoning for this project. So that's definitely being brought forward from the previous. The minimum amount they need to provide for the OCP requirement is 44. So they're providing 53. And actually one item I wanted to point out is that in advance of the new policy, the first right of refusal was 20%. What the applicant had offered the tenants, and that's what we included in the tenant relocation, the updated policy, something that we confirmed through independent analysis. The other item on the DCCs, I have taken a quick look here. I haven't been able to go through the record here in terms of what applies where, but with the lower unit count and density, the DCC amount is lower just by virtue of it being 283 units versus 370. But we can come back with the details on the DCC rates for third reading.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johansson.
Perfect. Is there any further questions or comments from council? Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Thank you. I do have some of the same concerns as Councillor White and Councillor Mack, and I can't support something where I don't know what will happen to our most vulnerable tenants that have been so I can't support that but the development itself, I really appreciate I really like the development. It's just unfortunate we're at a place in time that we're facing this and not the uncertainty of vulnerable tenants.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, so we do have a recommendation for consideration. So it's that the bylaw cited as zoning bylaw 1996, number 2100, amendment number 213/2024, number 3296 be read a first and second time. So is there a mover and a seconder? So moved by Councillor James and seconded by Councillor Albrecht. Is there any further discussion on it? So I'm seeing none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of it? Oh, sorry.
Just to correct, it's 3294, not 3296.
Oh, sorry, 3294. Thank you. Is everybody clear on that? Perfect. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? So it should be opposed by Councillor Matt, Councillor White, and Councillor Wallace. So it's carried. So with that, we can continue, and I guess there's an opportunity for the applicant to see how they can address some of these concerns for third reading. So with that, we're on to item 7A, which is another development application 20644 Eastleigh. So it's a development permit 0622. So with that, I will turn it over again to Mr. Johansson for a quick overview.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council and audience. Third time here. So we have a development permit for consideration on a subject property that is zoned C1 downtown commercial and designated transit-oriented residential in the OCP, which allows high-rise multifamily apartment development and a maximum density of 4.5 FAR. Since the site is already pre-zoned for higher density residential, the proposal requires a DP to proceed to building permit and construction. The proposal involves a 6-story building with 178 units, including 3-bedroom units, centered around a large outdoor courtyard that is cantilevered over a surface parking lot. And the building design also includes what we call a zero lot line or party wall treatment on the west side to permit denser development, not prevent development, consistent with that of the higher density vision in the OCP. The application is consistent with the OCP's development permit area guidelines and has been reviewed by the advisory design panel, and the applicant's responses are included in the memo attached. The applicant is also here to present their development permit proposal to council prior to council's consideration of the permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I'll ask the applicant team to provide a brief presentation to council.
Hello again, everyone. We'll share our screen again. So as mentioned, this is a C1 zone site along Eastleigh Crescent, where there's quite a bit of development going on. So there's a mix of 3-story apartments as well as many new 6-story apartments being built. Just a little bit of context, we are again off Eastleigh Crescent, about mid-block between Glover. Just again, some shadow studies of the proposed building. We do have a lane on one side and Eastleigh Crescent on the other. Again, some streetscapes of the adjacent buildings. Please keep in mind that these adjacent buildings may also be redeveloped to similar size and standards. Similar to our previous projects, we are in a floodplain, so we have raised the podium again and included all of our services as well as unit storage above grade with just parking and bike storage below grade. Unique to this project is we have on-grade parking with a street frontage for walkout units as well as to the east, some ground floor oriented units and parking access off the lane to the rear as well as loading. Just showing the separation of the residential and visitor parking here. with visitor being through the gate to the right and residential going down underground. And then we have another separation here for resident parking on grade as well, which is all secured. The second level, we have indoor amenity spaces that are adjacent to an outdoor podium amenity area with some also private patios and some community garden area, park area for the children, as well as a barbecue area and seating areas as well. And again, noting that the unit storage is located on each level above grade to provide storage on the same level as the residential units. It is pardon me, it is split by a firewall into two separate buildings just by code. And exits are provided on either end of the building, which directly exit to the street or to the lane. The design, Eric will speak to a little bit here.
Yeah, again, in keeping with the sort of urban fabric and facades along Eastleigh, that sort of connects Glover and 56 and creates this very pedestrian-friendly walkable street. These sort of ground-oriented walk-ups that are expressed along the ground plane, but yet we sort of created a vertical expression here to give some diversity, to create a sense of community with the other buildings in the area. The other thing is the firewall actually is concealed by treating it architecturally and creating an expression at the entrance and creating a sort of a prominent feature over the entrance so that the firewall is not seen. We brought in sort of some color elements, some green and some sort of earth tones, along with some sort of warm wood features to bring that sense of warmth and welcoming. Some masonry along the ground, a sort of brick around the ground plane, and then some other more smoother materials as you get higher up. And then bookended at each end of the building to sort of break the facade up and make it not feel like such a large building.
And we also have some raised ground floor units with walk-up patios. And again, for set-up purposes, for visibility and clear sight lines, we've created just a clear balcony, but also provides some privacy from pedestrians being raised above the ground. This is again just showing the outdoor amenity space with the surrounding units, allowing for public play, but also security, feeling of security being surrounded by the building, but not tight enough to feel claustrophobic. And then just some landscape drawings here, just showing the proposed planting on the ground floor, as well as in the amenity space with some shorter shrubbery and bushes, as well as some larger trees. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So with that, we'll see if council has any questions on the development permit. So as a note, I think this is C1, so it's within the existing zoning. Is that right, Mr. Johansson?
Yes, Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, perfect. So Councillor White, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Just a quick question to Mr. Johansson. Thank you for reviewing the information with us. I do have a question again regarding the status of these particular units. Are they all condo units? Are these rental apartments specifically? And if they are rental apartments, are they all market rental apartments, or are any of them classified as affordable within Metro Vancouver's kind of guidelines? So.
And just for clarity, Councillor, too, just as a note, this is only a development permit, so it's only for form and character. So council doesn't have the ability to vote against a project if it's only, it has to be specific to or the form and character. So I want to get you that answer, but just as a FYI, because it's not a rezoning application, if we're deciding on if we're going to approve it or not, it has to be on the form and character, not on the tenure or the density or any of those things. Those would be not permitted and could put us up for some liability concerns, just as a note. So just I wanted to put that there just so we know, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Johansson, not to interrupt you, but just wanted to let you know. And I don't know if Mr. Johansson,
I
if I said
appreciate that.
anything wrong, but I just wanted to set the stage because it's not very often we get a pure DP. So Mr. Johansson.
Well, thank you for the clarity.
Mr. Johansson, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it is a purely informational item, given this is a DP for form and character, like you noted. You know, the applicant may want to enlighten us in terms of what the tenure is seen to be for the application.
Yeah, and just for clarity too, the zoning for this was put in place in like the what, early 2000s or late 90s?
That's correct. Yeah, there's been a few iterations, but the intent of the zoning's been the same probably for about 20 years.
Okay, thank you very
This
much.
application does date back to 2022, so I think it might be a strata application, but like I said, if the applicant wants to let us know, it's up to them if they want to speak to this.
Yes, so I'll ask the applicant just as an information item. That doesn't really impact the decision making here, but could you let us know if you have that info? I don't know if the applicants can hear us. There we go.
Gerald, or Zach, would you like to speak to that?
Oh, there we go.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it is a market, it's going to market for sale.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor White, sorry to cut you off. Please continue with your questions.
No, I appreciate the clarity. Again, like you said, we don't often see just pure development applications. So I appreciate the context of your input. So no problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions for council on the DP? So I'm not seeing any from council. So we do have a recommended motion that the development permit number 06-22 to accommodate a 6-story, 178 unit apartment development at 20644 Eastleigh Crescent be approved. So is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by Councillor Solium. Do you have any further comments on the DP? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. This gives us to item 7B, which is a geotechnical peer review. So Mr. Johansson, I'll turn it over to you again. You have a lot of presentations in this meeting, Mr. Johansson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening. And I also have the city engineer, and Mr. Pollock is also here on the call with us. But what I could say to this item is that with applications in the city involving parkades, we're taking the approach that applications that involve excavation for parkades, underground buildings, would be the technical term, and the shoring that's required to ensure those excavations stay, safe and stable and open while the parkade's being constructed. That any of those excavation and shoring designs are designed to be appropriate to the specific soil conditions of a particular site. And it's signed and sealed by a certified geotechnical engineer. And this design is also peer reviewed and confirmed by an independent third-party geotechnical engineer prior to construction occurring. So it's known that we have challenging soil conditions here. Every municipality has unique site conditions that they need to manage. One of the key ones here is the soils. So we want to make sure that as we proceed with developments that are in stream and in the future, that we're having the appropriate excavation and shoring designed and then independently reviewed, so we have another set of eyes on them. Thank you.
Mr. Pollock, did you have anything additional to add?
Maybe just Yeah, I'll have a couple of words, I think, to build on what Mr. Johansson said. I think the intent obviously is to make sure that there's a real clear understanding of the expectations of a peer review and the process for going through that, and then what the deliverables would be. The intent is not to turn it into a review of the entire geotechnical design for the site. A peer review is intended to be sort of specific to an area. In this case, it would be the excavation and shoring. And I think the best way to move forward with this would be, and we've had some discussions with development service and engineering already, but to develop some documentation that could either go in policy or go into some of the other regulatory documents that would lay out the expectations, the extent of the review, how to evaluate the issues in the process. And then we consider how best to accomplish that, whether we go out to an RFP and secure some consultants to help us do these reviews, or have it as there may be an opportunity also for it to be reviewed internally within an organization, but we also have to make sure that there's no conflict of interest within that. And I think it's very, very important too that it's clear that the originating professional would still maintain responsibility for the design. He can't rely, or they cannot rely on our peer review to find out any missing little issues. But neither, so they can't shortcut their own responsibilities in terms of the overall project. But I think it's timely, given the increased complexity that we're seeing with the applications, and we would expect that we would be able to set this in place in fairly short order. I think we've notified applicants already, but there's also we have to determine the cost mechanism and how that gets accounted for as well. So that's just some thoughts on the overall peer process. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so just not to restate what you stated, but up until this point, the expectation has always been that when a design is engineered and stamped, that it meets specifications. And obviously, you can check certain things within our purview, but we are not the geotechnical engineers as a city, so we don't have that in-house expertise to know if the geotech is okay. We have to trust, or in the last, I guess, since 1955, we've trusted the stamp. We've noticed now, for whatever reason, in the last few years, that we're getting these cave-ins for whatever reason. Like you said, could be more complicated design, maybe where the soil is. I don't want to speculate on that. But in a response, we're really going, first of all, I mean, I think and we all as council, I think I'm speaking on behalf of all of council, we can't have cave-ins as part of, construction projects. It loses the confidence of council and the development industry, and, it makes people concerned for their lives, really, right? And then we've all heard that. So in a response to that, and to ensure that we're restoring confidence in the system, we're going above, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, what would be required to make sure that this is double checked now, to restore faith in this system where the faith in it has been rocked, quite frankly. So I'm really glad that we're doing this above and beyond to restore faith in the system here. So I just wanted to make sure that we're capturing that. We've been following the process to this date, but now we're going one step further to make sure that this hopefully never happens again. And I know we can never be in certainties, right? But I think that we're trying to at least make sure that two sets of eyes are seeing it. I guess the question I have for you is, one, is that true? And then the other part is, we're not putting this on our taxpayers to foot the cost of this, right? The development industry is paying for this review, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah,
So-
it'll be part of the process for these types of excavations.
Perfect. So with that, I do want to open it up to council, because I know we've had a few incidents in the community, and just make sure that if there is any questions for staff or what we're doing going forward, that we can address it in this open meeting. So we'll start with Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor Bahal, and thank you, Mr. Johansson and Mr. Pollack, for bringing this forward. I think it's absolutely the right thing for us to do. There is a high level of trust that we place in the stamp, as you said, Mr. Mayor, regarding these kind of projects, and making the time and doing the due diligence to ensure that there's proper and adequate peer review where there may be questions. And like you said, Mr. Pollack, the responsibility is first on those engineers to ensure that they're doing what they can to the fullest extent to ensure the safety of the project and the individuals that are living in those homes. So thank you both for bringing this forward, and I think this is absolutely the right thing for us.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Albrecht, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Paul, and I agree with Councillor White. I think this is something that not only protects the city, but also its residents and the existing infrastructure that we have. So I think this is a really important thing. I'm also gonna put a plug in for the possible consideration of peer review processes for other challenging items in the community, and that could be environmental. Something that you know, we have a pretty significant and important stream through our community, and it may be worthwhile having some engagement with a third party for our environmental protection, just to make sure that people are paying the kind of attention that is required to keep our community as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Albrecht. Is there any other further comments, questions from council? So I am seeing none, so that's on to item 7C. So it's just our 2025 council meeting schedule. So there's two recommendations there, which are just dates and that we adopt them, and that the location is still at City Hall at 7 p.m. Do you want me to read out all the dates, or are we good with moving these two things as they're written in our agenda? If so, I would entertain somebody moving it. So moved by Councillor James and seconded by Councillor Wallace. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. That moves us on to notices of motion. So I believe Councillor Mack has a notice of motion, and then we'll go to Councillor White, who has a notice of motion.
Thank you. Yes, I do. So just, I guess, reading it out, the motion is titled Budget Transparency, and I'm presenting this on behalf of myself as well as Councillor White. Reading the motion, it says, whereas transparency of the budget process and public awareness of deliberations on items not covered within Section 90 of the Community Charter is a paramount principle of good governance, and whereas closed meeting agenda items and discussion should be directly limited to those permitted to occur in a closed meeting format. Therefore, be it resolved that council conduct budget deliberations in open meetings of council, and that council consider service level increments or increases in closed meetings as necessary, but only as strictly permitted under Section 90 of the Community Charter.
Thank you very much. That is duly read in. Councillor White, please go ahead with yours.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Yes, the motion I'm presenting today is a motion, notice of motion directing staff to prepare a report on inclusionary zoning on behalf of Councillor Mack and myself. I'll read it as it stands. Whereas we recognize the last several years into a housing crisis with billions of dollars spent through federal and provincial housing initiatives, the issue of accessing local affordable housing in Langley City still remains a challenge, still out of reach for many, especially for our most vulnerable populations. And whereas Langley City to date lacks clear policy and supportive bylaws surrounding inclusionary zoning, which through its provision would provide the city the ability to substantially secure and support a socially diverse, economically sustainable environment with affordable housing now and in the future. And whereas the province, with the introduction of Bill 16, Housing Statutes Amendments Act, third reading on the 10th day of April 2024, provides these enablements to local municipalities. And further, with Metro Vancouver's regional district providing an in-depth report, a regional model for inclusionary housing, final report February 29th, 2024, which highlights the effectiveness of inclusionary zoning. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to research and provide a report back to council on a local policy framework for inclusionary zoning, such that can further be considered by council for adoption in the upcoming zoning bylaw update.
Thank you very much. Duly read in. Thank you so much. So with that, we have correspondence. So we have a Metro 2050 Type 3 Amendment, Regional Affordable Housing Target Implementation Guideline. So I'd like to move that we refer it to staff for comment. See if there's a seconder, seconded by Councillor Mack. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Are you opposed or carrying it unanimously, Councillor White?
Unanimously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa, you're
Sorry,
slowing down.
I was just
Okay.
relating.
Okay, I get it. Thank you. So that's carried unanimously. So we are at the adjournment of the meeting. So I'll move that the meeting adjourn, seconded by Councillor Mack. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? I'll assume it's unanimous. I hope everybody has an excellent meeting, and I'll see you around for our next one on next week. Until then, bye for now.